The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena. The television screen is the retina of the mind's eye. Therefore, the television screen is part of the physical structure of the brain.
Welcome to another episode of The Outer Reels. With me, I'm Jason, and with me, of course, is Sam.
Of course.
And this week we watched a forgotten Canadian classic called DEFCON-4.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have stuff to say. So now, I guess we should preface this. We've both seen this before, right? Like you watched it probably more recently than I did.
2007, when I first got up to Vancouver, I ran into John, and one of the first things we talked about was this movie, and I bought a copy on DVD somehow. So it was like one of the first movies
you did.
Yeah, it's one of the first movies I watched when I got to Canada, strangely enough.
I should have known you had a copy of this. I would have watched this in, when did it come out? Was it 86, 85?
85.
I don't remember now. So I would have rewatched this. I mean, it was straight to video. So I would have rented this around 86 or 87 at some point and watched it then on VHS solely because the poster is awesome.
It is a good poster.
It's a really great poster.
We talk about
nothing to do with the rest of the movie, but it's a great poster.
We talk about these a lot, like the ratio of like awesome factor on the poster to, tameness of the contents. And there was a lot of movies around this time that did this, and I vividly remember being in the video store as a kid, picking up like movies and being like, "Oh man, this looks awesome," and then trying to look. We talked about it before, but trying to look at the thumbnails on the back and try and gauge if they match what's on the poster, which they never did.
Well, this is it. The poster of this shows a skeleton inside a spacesuit, buried in the sand, with like a really awesome sort of satellite spaceship thing over top.
But also,
now the actual satellite looks nothing like that. But sorry, you were going to say something.
There's also like this sort of some form of city on the horizon in this desert, like this post-apocalyptic future city. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. But I love it. And it's called DEFCON-4, Defense Condition 4. Now, the best part about that, and because I started looking into this stuff afterwards, because as a young, early teenager, because I'm older than you, when I watched this, I was like, oh, man. And I was deathly afraid of nuclear war. I mean, I had the nightmares and everything. I remember one nightmare of watching like missiles flying overhead and shit.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but it's funny because I remember talking to my dad about that, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I had those." I'm like, "Oh man." And then of course the world we're in now, I'm sure my kids are getting that now. So nothing ever changes. So, yeah. So Defense Condition 4. What I wanted to say was, DEFCON 4 for the American military is like the low one.
It's inverted, right? Yeah, like it's
inverted.
One
yeah,
is the hot
they work your way up. Yeah, they work your way up to 1. I remember it was a big deal in like war games, right? So, which was around, I think it was like 84 for war games. So you think they could have figured that part out?
Yeah, that is a strange thing because I don't know what the conversation of is, why it was that, or somebody just mistaken it and never questioned it, and then they just rolled with it. Because I think as a civilization, we've only been to DEFCON 2 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's like the furthest we'd ever been.
I think so, yeah.
This is just a weird reason. But I was also trying to give it the benefit of the doubt, thinking, well, if they're just up in the space station, maybe. But you're right. It's completely ass backwards.
But, I mean, and that's the least of some of the weirdness of this movie. So
okay, so on that, you walk in to an office building, and you get in the elevator.
Who am I pitching it to this time?
Tony Scott is next to you in the elevator.
Tony Scott.
And you've got 4 floors to tell him about this movie that he's going to fund. How do you sell him that?
Didn't Tony Scott throw himself off a bridge?
Yeah, but he also made The Last Boy Scout, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. So Tony Scott is miraculously back from the dead.
He could have entirely thrown himself off a bridge after you pitched him DEFCON 4 in an elevator.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ. Anyway, nothing against Ridley or Tony Scott. I
Love
like
them.
both of their movies. Yeah. Okay. So the basis of this is you've got three people who work for the military. I think two are actually whatever they are. They're the launch techs, nuclear missile launch techs, and one's I guess a doctor that's up there with them. And so two men and a woman. They've been up there for like 13 months. I think it's like 400 and some odd days at the start of the movie. They're circling the Earth, and the movie starts off with some text talking about how. So the movie starts off with text right off the top. It is the day after tomorrow. The ultimate nuclear defense system has been perfected. Security has been achieved. Global conflict is now unthinkable. Cut to 5 minutes later, and of course, World War III is going off. But so you've got these two missile techs and I guess a doctor up there on a really rapidly spinning space station.
It is pretty fast, that model.
Yeah,
Zipping.
and well, I mean, I guess because they didn't want to try and fake zero gravity, which is why they did that. But it's amazing how, like, if any of these guys are looking out a window, they'd be puking their guts out. So anyway, they various shenanigans are going on down on Earth. Something about Libyan terrorists hijacking a U.S. commercial ship.
Not the
But it
same
turns
Libyan terrorists from Holy
to
Shores
Future.
in the army now.
The Libyans were the go-to terrorists in the 80s.
Yeah. I like how
'Cause
we're
they were
running
all-
out of terrorists. Like, we can't.
Well, they're also the ones that supplied Doc Brown with the
yeah.
fissionable material in Back to the Future as well.
It's just like we're running out of people that we can, like, call. Remember in the remake of Red Dawn, they made up this, like, fake nation that was, like, combined with, like, Russia and North Korea.
I was gonna say it was like I just remembered it being North Korea. I know it was originally China, and then they posted afterwards. They changed it all,
It wouldn't surprise me.
so it wasn't China anymore. I don't know. I only vaguely remember that movie. I remember being sick home from work one day and put it on Netflix and proceeded to sleep through 90% of it, and felt like I didn't miss a thing. So there you go. So anyway.
We did
yes.
in Six Underground, the country where all the bad guys come from is called Turkestan, and nobody ever asked if it was real. They just bought into it. That's fine.
Yeah, well, it's fine. Six Underground was. I know you love that movie.
I loved working on it. I don't think I loved watching
okay.
it.
Okay, I had a real problem with that movie, mainly because the whole thing is just nothing but flashbacks, and then they say, and now you're pretty much caught up, and then 90 seconds later into another flashback.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it
and
was
then
just like,
let's not forget that the end sequence is like, and this was episode 1 of 7 more movies to come.
So anyway, yeah, it turns out this ship is that was supposed to be just like a normal American naval, or not naval ship, sorry, like commercial vessel, is loaded with like Tomahawk missiles. And the Libyans shoot one to the Soviet Union. And it crashes, was it Moscow, I think they mentioned, but it didn't go off. And then like flash forward 3 days later, and the US and Russia are just like bombing the snot out of each other, firing missiles left and right. And we know cities are going up because they're up on the space station flipping channels on the TV, and
It's
they
always
keep
the
going to
telltale
no,
sign. The telltale sign is when the TV reception goes up.
exactly. So over and over again.
Yeah, it's a good setup. I mean,
Yep.
I assume Tony Scott's left the elevator at this point, but I would probably just say that it's 3 astronauts are in a space station that are in control of a weapon system, and World War breaks out beneath them, and the world becomes essentially eradicated, and they're left with one last order. Do they do it? Do they not? What's their situation?
Right.
Ultimately, they return to Earth and see what the fallout has become.
Yeah, but they don't return to Earth intentionally.
That's correct,
So,
actually.
Yeah. So they're sitting there. They're up there for I think it's like 3 months. They
No, is
don't.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they fire their missiles. They don't fire any of them. And they're up there for like 3 more months. And then all of a sudden some telemetry stuff comes in, and all of a sudden they're deorbiting, and they have to scramble, and they jettison all the missiles, but one stays stuck in its launcher.
Like in Dark Star, the missile, it's a super smart bomb, and they try and detach it, but it doesn't want to detach itself, so it just sits there and starts talking to them.
Yeah, so anyway, it one doesn't launch. They manage to get rid of the rest of them, and they come down and they crash land off the coast of Nova Scotia, because this is a Canadian movie. And
I did wonder where it was shot when I saw it. I was like, where was this filmed?
It's where they said I think they said they were in Nova Scotia too. Like,
okay.
I don't think they even tried to hide it.
Later, I did think they mentioned that. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, they crash, and then one of their door is like stuck in the sand.
Should we go back a little bit? I just want to talk about the spaceship itself.
Sure.
So, really, like the opening of the movie and the setup of the movie is the best part of the movie for me. The concept of it is great, and the idea that you're just sitting up there in space, orbiting around Earth, watching all the nations destroy themselves, is like a cool sci-fi, eerie concept in itself, right? Mm-hmm. And it looks pretty good inside the spaceship. It's not incredible, but for, you can tell that they had a budget to stick to, but it's pretty decent. Like, I'm not sort of saying, oh, this looks terrible or anything. Like, it got the point across. But I feel like that's where all the money and effort went into this movie. And then when we get to Earth, it falls off pretty quick as far as, anything impressive, as far as sets and props and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not great. So, but we'll get to that. So,
did you notice? Speaking of sets, did you notice the shot where they're inside at the beginning when they're in the spaceship, and I guess it's Walker, because we should talk about three characters. There's woman, there's Jordan, who's a doctor, and she was played by Kate Lynch, which I think you would know better than anybody, right?
Oh, because she's in Meatballs. like every other Canadian actor.
I was gonna say she's in Meatballs.
Yeah. Everybody's in Meatballs, although I don't think Maury Chaykin was, who's Vinny, but I'm getting ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's her, this doctor called Jordan, and then there's this guy named Walker, who's played by John Walsh. And I thought he was the better of the three actors up in the space capsule.
Yeah.
But I looked into it, and he'd only done one other thing called Siege, and he was a producer on it. And Siege was also made by the director Paul O'Donovan, who he made Siege, and then he made this movie. So there's some help there or whatever. But as you know, or as we'll get to, Walker's short-lived. But we should talk about how the main character, Tim Choate, he was a Texan. Did you know him from anything?
No, but I'm sure you're going to tell me why I should.
He was in a lot of stuff. He bounced around.
Oh shit! I just looked him up.
Yeah,
I know why I know him.
Yeah, I was going to say
Zathras on Babylon 5.
Exactly. I was like,
crap.
This is so inside your wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's not Zathras. Zathras.
Unfortunately, he died from a motorcycle accident in 2004. He was only 50. So,
oh wow.
But his performance is fine. Again, I think it's more engaging when they're in the spaceship, but then once they're on Earth, I just don't care as much. But there is a scene where they're on the ship and they're starting to figure out what's going on Earth. And there's this wide shot, and there's a ladder that goes up, presumably up to the next floor and below the other floor. And then Walker, the other astronaut, comes into frame climbing the ladder. He's like, I'll go and have a look. But clearly the ladder doesn't go below the set, and the camera is wider on the lens, and it just looks like, when you do the fake escalator in front of a window and like walk down steps, it's exactly that, but it's the opposite, and he's pretending to come up out of a hole in the ground, and it's hilarious. I highly recommend you check it out. Yeah, I don't know where should we get back to. They crash on Earth. Yeah,
so they crash there on the beach. Their exit, their port, whatever, their door is buried in the sand. So they start to sort of dig their way out, but it's slow going. Like one of them's using like a dinner tray to try and dig out because they don't have a shovel or anything. Then they hear like knocking on the side, like on one of the walls. So they knock back, and then it knocks back again, and they realize there's somebody out there. So they start digging more frantically, and then that's when Walker basically gets, pulled out.
It's a cool sequence because you think they're actually genuinely somebody's like, oh, you need help when they're, and then they just start getting pulled up through the sand. It's kind of terrifying. It's well executed.
It's well done, and then his hand falls back through the hole. So, yeah. Oh, and we should forgot to mention that Kate, our doctor, has a concussion from crash landing, so she gets knocked clear, I guess.
And they're trying to escape.
Her head.
And then that's kind of begins the. I hate to divide this movie into acts because it's a little muddy where they are, but I would sort of say that,
or there's 6 of them,
yeah, or one,
or one, yeah.
So because that's kind of what happens is that Hal ends up leaving a recording on a cassette for her, and
but he also leaves a note. But he leaves a big note attached to it too. It's like if you're writing a note, just write the note.
I thought the note just said like listen to this tape or something like that.
Probably, but it was a big enough piece of paper to explain that he had gone out looking for help.
It's like that time when people would send you a fax and say, "Hey, check your email."
It's a brief time where that was. Yeah.
The other thing I should talk about is the actual crash to Earth is non-existent. They're in space. Right. And they go into re-entry, and then we just see this slightly wide shot of the capsule on a beach somewhere in Nova Scotia. But there's no real debris, there's no smoke, there's no effort put in, and it feels very, very like much of a long jump cut or something because it's not a very impactful crash to Earth. It's pretty underwhelming.
It's showing their budget.
For sure, because they spent it all inside the capsule again, which looked pretty good.
I did like the fact that was wearing the American and Canadian patch on his uniform. One of them was anyway, for sure, had both patches on his uniform. Because this is a movie by Canadians for Canadians.
I remember that.
It was weird.
Yeah, I don't recall that. Well,
yeah, it was weird. It just had 2 side by side, so it was like they were like, it's just like this long ass patch with 2 flags on it, basically.
What's also strange is like, they take, like, Walker's reaching up, and he gets sucked out of the capsule, and then his hand, like I said, drops back in. And it's pretty terrifying. And then it kind of just, Hal just decides, okay, well, I'm just going to go up there myself. And
well, he does make some comment about how he's waited till nightfall or something.
Right.
And,
I guess they're still, he feels they're satiated on Walker, I guess. So he's going to go up and look around. So he just sort of escapes the capsule, and then kind of in Empire of Ash 3 friend, he runs across cannibals.
Yes. And I actually wrote cannibals ? After a month ?
Yes.
Because what we have to remember is it's only been a couple of months since World War III.
I'm sure it's been 60-something days, one of them mentioned later, and it just doesn't make sense.
Like it's not even 3 months.
No.
And civilization is completely broken down to the, like...
There is more than 3 months' supply of Chef Boyardee at every supermarket on Earth.
Yeah, but they're making a big deal about how they have 4 months of food in the space station or in the capsule.
That
or whatever.
becomes Hal's like actual bargaining point throughout the movie. Like, if you help me out, you can come back to the ship, and I've got all this food. But I'm totally with you on the progression is so fast because he comes out of the ship and then runs in at cannibals, but then there's all these other things that happen down the line that just seem so advanced for how quickly this is all happening.
What we're seeing should have taken years.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe even a decade, because when they get to that fort, it's like a complete feudal society, and it looks like the Middle Ages.
But they've established hierarchy and all this. None of that happens overnight. 60 days, people are still fending for themselves. Like nobody is.
They're still trying to hold to. They're still trying to hold the social norms.
Exactly.
They're still trying. It's insane.
It was a big fail on the movie. I mean, it would be a very simple thing to just keep them up there for another 3 years or something in the movie and say, time passed, and then the capsule crashes to Earth, and it would be a lot more believable. Like, it wouldn't change anything.
Well, because they'd been up there for over a year. And I think the idea was they're supposed to be up there for still another 6 months.
Right.
So why they only had 4 months of food is beyond me. Well, I guess they're saying they'd been up there for a couple more months, I guess. But they only have enough food for the time they're there? Like,
And now they only have 2 people left because Walker got turned into somebody else's food.
yeah, so that's an extra couple of months right there.
Well, I will
Especially
say
if they take
the
it
shot
easy.
where he comes across the cannibals and they're carving into the leg looked pretty good.
Yeah,
It was like one of the better effects in the movie, I think.
it was the only one.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
yeah.
Actually looked, it was like borderline like tasty. I was like, this looks like pretty good cut of meat. It was pretty good.
Hal wanders off and he finds Vinny's little compound.
Vinny, my favorite character in the movie.
Maury Chaykin, classic Canadian character actor. So, you know,
I was surprised
shit
about,
ton of stuff, but not meatballs.
I had to look up who he was, but once I saw his credits, I was like, huh? And then I dived
in
into it and started
everything.
seeing it. But you obviously would know him a lot more because he's a constant in the Canadian world. But he had some fun roles. You know, his name is Vinny in this movie. And 10 years later, he appeared in the movie My Cousin Vinny. Not playing
Yes,
Vinny,
he
of
did.
course.
No.
He was probably the highest prestige actor, I think, of this movie. He did Iron
Yeah.
Eagle 2, and he did Meatballs 3. He was also, I think to me, what stood out the most is that he's in Twins. He's the schlub trying to take the prototype engine from him.
Okay. I don't remember that, but okay.
Great movie.
Oh, no, I've seen Twins a billion times. I just don't. It's been too long, I guess, since I watched it.
Right, because Danny DeVito has that prototype engine in his trunk. That's what they're trying to smuggle, right? And
That's right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so Maury Chaykin is the head schlub mob guy trying to get that from him. That's the whole thing. But
More importantly, he was in Millennium. So I know you were just going to bring that up.
dude, that's a good movie too. I really like
I liked Millennium. I did like Millennium a lot. So,
I should say at this point, with now that we've had this guy in a movie we've watched, and we've now watched 5 movies, now we can strike off. We've had a character from every entire Meatballs series and a character from the entire Iron Eagle series. It's pretty good.
I have never seen a Meatballs movie because I am a terrible Canadian, and I've only ever seen Iron Eagle 1. So
Wow.
I know I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great movies.
Yeah, so we get to Vinny's compound, and yeah, he sneaks inside. I noticed right away that the candle holder was an Alexander Keith stubby beer bottle, Nova Scotia's finest, and I swear they were a sponsor of the movie because you find their beer everywhere in this movie.
Thank you. Because there is a shot later where there's one of those stubbies on the rickshaw when they're towing the and I was like, what beer is that? It's like, because it's a stubby like a red stripe. I was like, maybe it's some weird Molson that I never saw or something, but I didn't realize. So that's what it is. It's an Alexander Keith.
Alexander Keith's. They were one of the early kind of sort of independent breweries that kind of took off in Canada. It's good beer.
Wow.
But it's, yeah.
They really force it. I mean, it's label forward on every shot that it's in the movie.
Yeah. And then our bad guy with Kevin Bacon hair is drinking one later on too. So.
Oh man, I got a lot to say about him once he shows up.
Yes, so do I. So anyway,
Vinny the survivalist.
He's in Vinny's place, who is a survivalist. And again, I gotta say, it's been 2 months.
Yeah.
So Vinny's got, or he's trying to sneak up to Vinny's place. That's right. And doesn't Vinny? Then he picks him up and walks him a bit. I guess you're supposed to assume he's got mines laid on the 6x8 space that he calls a front lawn, and because he's got like a string running around it too. And he picks him up and then takes him inside the house.
But he blindfolds him to make sure he can't see where he's
Can't see the
stepping
way.
because
That's
he's got
right.
all of his tripwires set up.
Right. The tripwires that are not fishing line, but like white, very bold white string. Like you can see them very clearly.
It's very, very visible. Now, did you notice why it's being attached with somebody's social security card?
Oh, yeah, that's a SIN number. It's someone's SIN card.
But it's so weird because it's
Yeah, social insurance number we have in Canada.
in whatever scenario where you use a tripwire, why would you ever use a debit card or anything else in line with it? But for some reason, it's full on. And actually, did you know, believe it or not, that the name on that Cordell Wynn, he was the line producer for the movie. For some reason, they just wanted to use his social insurance card.
That was a way of putting him into the movie. That's because you need that to work in Canada. It's the same as like
Social security. Sorry, yeah, I keep calling it a social security card. Yeah,
yeah. So it's a sin. So social insurance number is what we call it. And I still have mine memorized because it was my student ID when I was in school.
But and
my card is long since disintegrated.
In what world of 60 days of apocalypse are you using SIN number cards for tripwires? It's a strange choice.
From somebody else too. But I mean, that's the one thing is he gets into his house and he's got like the flimsiest door I've ever seen in my life. Like it's just, again, it's like they saw Mad Max and they thought, oh, we got to make this look like the wasteland. And everything's sort of hodgepodgely built. But again, it's been 2 months. This house should be pristine.
I know. Again, why,
maybe a little overgrown in the outside, but yeah, it's crazy.
And to your point, this would have been so easy to fix if you just had them stay in space for another year, and it probably would have had, which we'll get to, and why they crashed and everything. But it would have made a lot more sense later. It's just such a It doesn't. These are the things that don't need to be rushed. If you want the movie to look like that, just put a title card up and pretend they're up there for a couple more years. It's so simple, and I just don't understand.
They make a point of telling us how many days they've been up there. And it goes from like, was it 401 or something like that, or 403 or whatever the first number is. And then it jumps a couple of months. And it's like 460 something. And it's like, well, you could have said they've been up there for 1,000 days.
Doesn't matter.
They've been up there for 3 years now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, there is a comic book series called Y the Last Man, done in the early 2000s by Brian K. Vaughan and Pia Guerrera. Pia lives not that far from me.
God, here we go. We found your niche.
You know, you tie everything to Phantasm. I tie everything to comic books. So in Y the Last Man, the idea is through some kind of mysterious event, which they explain at the end, which doesn't really work, but whatever, that every male mammal spontaneously dies. So the human race is now on a ticking clock. And there's one guy left. It's him and his helper monkey he was trying to his helper monkey he was trying to train for a university or something. So it was just like he's a theater guy. His name's Yorick. That's hence Y the Last Man, but also Y chromosome. And the idea is something to do with him and this monkey are the only reasons why he's still alive. And now it's just a world of women. The animal species are dying out because, like mammal animal species are all dying out because there's no men or no males left. And at one point, a satellite or like as part of a space station capsule comes down. And what I thought was hilarious was it had been up there for a few years, and it was 2 men and a woman. And it was like, I swear, Brian K. Vaughan saw this movie and thought, I better correct that. Sorry, it's a long way to go to give you this stupid little bit of info.
I'll take it. If that inspired somebody to be like, this is a great idea, but God, they got the timing wrong. I'm going to fix that.
I swear that's the reason.
I'm good for it because somebody needs to, because it might be the biggest single atrocity of this film.
Now that Vinny, who is Maury Chaykin, he's got Hal in his house. He's getting ready to kill him because what does he need him for? And that's when Hal says, well, I've got 4 months worth of food.
Yep.
And then mentions that there's also a woman. and this is where the best line of the movie comes from.
Line in the movie.
Vinny just asks, what color are her areolas? And I'm just like,
he doesn't care about
out of
food
nowhere
or anything, and he's ready to blast him. And he's like, "Wait a minute!" And then he just goes straight into the nipple talk, and he's like, "I want to know everything about it."
Well, I guess that matters to him. I don't know.
It's
just like so ridiculous.
A strange choice for a character to be interested in in this time, which has been a harrowing 60 days without electricity. And now he's picking and choosing what kind of nipples a woman has, if he's really interested or not.
And we should add, Maury looks like he's never been near a woman in his life. So
except we could introduce the next
Yes.
character, JJ, because he offers, I guess they're having this conversation over some kind of dinner and they're eating some slop. And Hal
some kind of gruel.
Yeah. And Hal is not that crazy about it, but, you know, he's been in a spaceship for, well, he's had better food than the last 60 days, apparently.
Yeah. And so Vinny takes the food and says, "You're wasteful." And then he takes it and he opens up a trap door into the floor and throws it down there. And you hear some sound from someone. And that's it.
Yeah, it's like a little steel cooking pot, and he just lifts the hatch up, throws it in there, and then you hear a very nice, casual "thanks" voice come from down in the hatch, which introduces the character JJ, played by Lenore Zahn, who you would know very well because
God, I didn't look up the cast on this. I should have.
She was the voice of Rogue in the 1992 X-Men series.
Right. Yes, she is. And not a lot else. Oh, she did 10 episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, too. She's quite an accomplished voice actor.
Yeah.
So there you go. But yeah, so JJ is, for whatever reason, living under Vinny's floor.
She's still in her, like, blazer from her private school.
Yeah, which I find hilarious. And but otherwise, she just looks a bit disheveled. But again, her clothes aren't at least the clothes in the show are nowhere near as good a shape as they were in Empire of Ash. Nothing looked brand new.
And she's in great spirit, too.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. So Vinny goes out. I don't remember why, but he goes out and leaves, Hal tied up. And then all of a sudden we notice over around the corner, some of the floorboards slip out of the way. And JJ comes out and starts eating more food and stuff. And I'm just like, but if you're locked down there and you can get out anytime you want like this, why are you still there?
Yeah, I try and think of it as like maybe there's a Stockholm syndrome, maybe he has food, and maybe she's like, you know what, I'll take a basement with food out of anywhere else in the world. All of that flies, like we said, if it's been 3 years. If it's been 60 days, it's not something you settle for.
No, exactly. It's crazy. I guess at this point is when Vinny comes back, finds, JJ and Hal just kind of chatting away.
Well, they have a conversation because...
Well, she won't untie him.
Well, isn't there a conversation about a sailboat?
She kind of mentions about, because he says they can get away somewhere or something.
She can get away, but he somehow knows how to sail. So between the two of them now, you have a successful escape because she knows where there's a boat and he knows how to operate it.
And then Vinny comes back and he's like, well, let's go get your stuff. So he has them both tied up and puts them in the front of what I could only describe as your beloved killdozer.
Yeah, it's this big armor-plated articulating loader.
Yeah, it's like it's a digger.
Actually, it looks cool. Yeah.
And it's all armor plated, and he's just got like a little piece of mesh covering the eye hole, and even that's peeled away a little bit so he can kind of see out.
I think it's barely. More so you can kind of see his character inside it.
Exactly. Definitely.
Yeah. It reminds me, there's a much better version of articulated loader that was used in Cherry 2000. Had some great armor plating on it, but I get what they're going for here.
Anyway, and he makes some half-assed comment about keep an eye out for those guys from Fort. But anyway, so they get down to the beach, and of course, all these sorta soldiers are there. Right, because there's mostly kids.
At this point, we've established there's some kind of military collective or bad guys.
It's a fort something or other.
Yeah, I forget.
And I didn't get the impression that they were really bad guys. He was just like, watch out for those guys.
Well, we also have cannibals. And then we also have these zombies that they refer to as terminals, as in they are terminally ill from the radiation, I guess.
Well, I thought the terminals and the cannibals were the same thing. Are they not?
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess they just refer to the cannibal zombie because they're zombies. Yeah. It's Empire of Ash 3 all over again.
Doesn't need to be clear. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they get down there, and of course the military guys have already beat them to it, and they're waiting for them, and they manage to tie down the
loader.
The loader, thank you, as it's trying to drive along.
Yep.
And then they drop a grenade through his eye hole. And now I understand why the mesh was pulled away a little bit. Because it didn't need to be, because he could see through that mesh fine.
That's exactly how they were going to kill Marvin Heemeyer. They even dropped a grenade down his exhaust, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. So, God, you would know way too much about that. Yeah, so they drop a grenade in, and he, jumps out and stuff, and they're like, "You silly Vinny, it's a dummy." And so, yeah, they take him back to their base compound.
Well, this is
whatever.
Because it's kind of a race is on for this capsule, right? And so Hal is convinced Vinny, like, hey, like, just let me go. I'll take you to my capsule. You can have all the stuff. I want to keep moving. And so they head back to the capsule, but at the same time, this military group have also had their eyes on the capsule, and they've arrived at the same time. And so they one-up them. And now the goal is to bring the capsule back to this town or this fort. And that's where there's this shop where there's this rickshaw that's like towing the capsule. And there's a cup holder for that beer just bobbling around, like fully in frame, which I thought was really funny.
More Alexander Keats and Stubby, because you got to know this is still the 80s. Because those things are in long necks now and have been forever. But this also reminds me we should jump back. So, as we mentioned earlier, one of the nuclear weapons, one of the missiles, did not eject. Now, what they did before they launched them was set them on a 60-hour timer, which I guess was the longest.
His maximum option, yes.
Yeah. So this missile crash landed with them, and it's still in there, and it's still on a timer. So we have been counting down this whole time. From 60 hours. So we should mention from the time they land on Earth to the end of the, it's now on a timer. So we're able to keep track of how long it goes by.
We finally have a ticking clock, too. This is the intense cutaway to the timer counting.
Exactly. Now. And it matters way, way more than it did in Starship Invasions. So.
I don't know, man. We can get to that. But what you're getting at with this ticking bomb inside the capsule that is, I guess, unaware to the people who run the fort. What is strange to me is this was actually the first time, because you see the fort or this base they've built, and this was the first time when I said, wait a minute, how long were they in space for? Because this
2 months.
This was the real realization when I was like, how has this become in existence and established over such a short time?
Yeah, I've literally got written down, it's been maybe 3 months underlined.
Yeah, I have a note that says 64 days. I believe somebody mentioned that, which is just seems outrageous. Again, the biggest fail of this movie, and very easy to avoid. I just don't know why there was a decision made on that's what the ultimate was going to be.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's, again, why it doesn't fit, because you've got this entire, like, they have basically, like, slave labor. They've created this whole new society and stuff. And again, these people would still have their own homes, their own food. Why are they there? Like, again, if it had been 3 or 4 years, totally buy it.
And let's be clear, like, it doesn't look like some established city. It looks like a shanty town with, like, wooden pallets and tarps.
Yeah.
Like, structures still exist. Like, everything's still, like, I don't know. It's just, it's a bad thing. Well, and this is probably a good time to introduce the main bad guy, Gideon Hayes.
Yeah, this is the dude with the Kevin Bacon haircut. He's got the same haircut Kevin Bacon has in Footloose. And
the actor is Kevin King. Did you know much about him?
I did not, no.
I was actually kind of into this movie still at this point, and then this guy showed up, and then it was a big groaner. It was like, I just don't care about some young kid taking over and running this place. on all things. I just don't buy into young characters anywhere because there's no qualification of who they are and where they've been and what they've done. And they do go into why he's this snot-nosed kid who's running it.
Well,
but it's so
he is
unbelievable.
he is the 80s rich kid villain from every 80s movie you've ever seen.
Right.
That's all he is. He's just the rich kid douche. And that's all he's playing, and somehow he's managed to take over this entire thing. And you find out it's because, again, he's a rich kid. His dad was like
general or something, right?
And they were on a helicopter to go to one of the safe areas, and the helicopter went down. And that's where you also find out that JJ is his ex-girlfriend.
Yes.
Although she thinks she just said he's my boyfriend. Did
she was in that? Well, she was in the helicopter with them when they went
down.
Yeah, so
she was with them. That's how she survived. And then Boomer was with them,
Love
who
Boomer.
we'll meet soon.
I can talk about Boomer in a little bit.
So all that stuff kind of goes down. You find out the helicopter crashes, and that's how, because I guess he's American, which again is why he's a douche, I guess. And you're not really American. It's fine. I kid. I work with a ton of Americans.
It was like the very beginning of the war, like within an hour when it was starting. The helicopter landed at the school, picked him up, took his girlfriend as well, and his dad had some equipment that they were taking somewhere that they were going to be able to use to like help fight or like track satellites. I don't know what it was, but then the helicopter crashes, and now he's left with it with his girlfriend. And then somehow in 60 days, he starts an empire of garbage. And now rules it all. But the actor Kevin King is known for, again, like I said, Iron Eagle 1. Ready? And the coolest one on his credit list is The Quest from 1986. You wouldn't know this movie, but it's an Australian movie that I already have in my list to cover on our Australian season. So I thought that was a doozy. So that ties it all in. So it's going to be definitely, because that is a very typical forgotten Australian film. And then he did a bunch of run of TV stuff, like all the usual stuff of that period: Chips, Fall Guy, T.J. Hooker, you know. But the
Dallas, Falcon Crest.
Again, it's just, how did he build this in 60 days from just being a school kid? It just doesn't track well.
Yeah, no, he does it off charisma because he's an 80s white guy douche.
They do. Well, this is back to Boomer, who's my favorite character in the film.
Yeah.
And we get introduced to him.
And Boomer got injured in the helicopter crash, and he's their Navy tech or Air Force tech or whatever he is. And I guess this is where we find out he's the one who reprogrammed the satellite to come down to them.
And he's a vegetable at this point. He is like a quadriplegic strapped to a gurney, and he's just foaming and drooling at the mouth. And he's of no physical use, but he knows how all the systems work. And that's when it's revealed that he programmed the satellite to come crash to Earth.
Right. And I guess it's because they wanted to get something off of it, right? They took a hard drive or something off of it.
I still don't really understand why they even cared, or why the leader, Gideon, wanted this, whatever's in the satellite.
Well, I guess because the satellite's been up there, it's been looking at the Earth the whole time, because he's now able to figure out where the one safe place to go is. There's one like safe zone or whatever. And when he pulls it up, the computer says, they're basically longitude and longitude coordinates, and it says negative, negative, and then one says positive, and another one goes negative.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So that's when, or Kevin Bacon guy gets
Gideon Hayes.
Will always be Gideon. Thank you. That's it. Just remember him like kind of fist pumping the air. Because it's like he knows where to go
like
now.
A snot-nosed teenager. Yeah, because that's the idea, is that the space station recorded all this information where all the bombs dropped, and there's one spot that isn't, so it's a safe haven. But
now, did you look up the coordinates by chance? Because I did.
Oh no! Damn it!
So it's up in the North Atlantic. It's like Sweden. Is when I first saw it, and I thought, oh, this is cool. They put it where
probably
the
an
sea
IKEA
vault is. No. But I was thinking like the Svardbard seed vault or whatever, which would have just been something that was kind of talked about around then. They were starting to put that together.
Interesting.
The thing didn't get built, I think, until like the late 90s or maybe as early 2000s. But they'd already started kind of working on this stuff. And I just thought, well, that's really clever. Like maybe they, so not at all.
I was about to say, so they've done all this research and they still come up with 64 days.
Yeah. So the longitude's kind of right for that, and I thought it'd be kind of close, but no, it's wrong. The actual coordinates are in the Gulf of Bothnia, which is in the North Atlantic between Sweden and Finland. It's the middle of the. It's just like there's no land. It's just ocean. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. Of course,
I love that you looked this up and figured this out. You've gone above and beyond. That's incredible.
Well, it's just, I was just like, well, I had to keep going back too to try and read it. Yeah. But I was just like, I gotta see what this is. And I almost gave it credit, and then I realized, no, it's the fucking middle of the water. There's like hundreds of miles on each side. There's like no land, and it's just like you're gonna sail and stay in the ocean. So
I should just talk a little bit more about Boomer because Boomer's played by Alan McGilvray. He didn't really do anything. He was in Siege before this, which was the Paul Donovan, the director. It was his previous movie.
So he pulled in some friends for this.
But the biggest thing he did after this, and his top credit, he was an assistant production manager on Norman's Awesome Experience. Now, I don't know about this movie, but I assume you being the Canadian you are, you would. It's like some weird sci-fi comedy from mid-'80s. I'm
looking at it now. This might need to be our next movie.
God damn it.
well, it's your pick, so. No, but anyway. But,
yeah, it was a random thing. But here's what I can say about this movie. The most interesting and character that made me be engaged is a vegetable. And he's strapped to a table.
And he's in the movie for a total of about 6 minutes.
Right. And he's like foaming at the mouth. And then there's that whole bit where they cook a steak and they're like, here, get it for yourself. Cook some venison and throw it in the mud and unstrap him. And because he can't, you can have a character that's a vegetable is more interesting than the rest of the movie. It's a little rough.
Now that Gideon has the information he needs, he doesn't need any of our heroes, who, strangely enough, I guess Vinny is one of the heroes now. So
he's not the baddest guy anymore.
No, I guess that's it. So they've taken the three of them and strapped them. They've got them up. Like they basically do like a kangaroo court, one that would be done a few years later, way better on the pilot episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. By the way,
this scene was so long. By the way, I don't know how they turned this public hanging sequence into like a 15-minute scene in the movie. It just dragged.
Well, they do the court first, and then they find them all guilty. And for whatever reason, Gideon just lets everyone kind of say yay or nay. But so they take it. But it's funny because it's like they obviously shot them coming through the crowd once, and then they use that footage twice.
I didn't notice
so they use them. They're going through the crowd before they have the trial, and then they're going through the crowd again when they go to the gallows.
It's the same shot.
And it's I don't know if it's exactly the same shot, but it's the same angle. Setup, it's the same setup. It's the same everything. It might be just a different take. He gives JJ a chance to get herself out of being hanged. Basically, he wants to profess his love for her or something like that, or vice versa, whatever the hell it is. She spits on him instead. And then he gives the three of them. So we should point out it's four of them. Sorry, it's Vinny, it's JJ, it's Hal, and it's our doctor lady again with the areolas. We don't know what color they are. So the four of them are up there, and meanwhile, Boomer is crawling through the crowd. Slowly but surely, he is crawling through the crowd. And they cut to him a couple of times as he's crawling through the crowd. So Gideon gives them all a choice. he will save whomever is willing to come down and pull the lever to execute the other three. And at this point, I'm like, why doesn't Vinny step forward?
Yeah, this is
Like,
he's
Vinny-
got no skin in this game.
Exactly. He's just like, but for whatever reason, he's got camaraderie with these three now, and he will not save his ass if it means throwing them under the bus, which is crazy.
Maybe he doesn't want the nipples to die.
He's thought this through, and he figures the only way they can survive is if all of them survive.
The only way I get the nipples is if everybody survives.
So anyway, and then Hal, is it Hal?
Yeah.
Our main guy?
He escaped.
He steps forward because it's not like, it's obvious like he's got some kind of plan, but he doesn't. And so he steps down and he goes up to the lever, and just as he does that, Boomer somehow manages to pull himself up and he shoots Gideon, and he only gets him in like the arm or the side or something.
It's the classic Western hanging scene,
Yeah.
right till the last second, and then it gets broken up. But also, in between this, I think we've got a couple times where it's been intercut to see the countdown on the nuke that's sitting in there, unbeknownst to anybody, because
We're down to,
that's
like,
not clear either. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if does Gideon and all the bad guys know that this nuke is ticking down? I don't think anybody does, other than Hal, right?
We realize later in the movie, obviously nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else knows it's there. So, and I don't even think, I think Hal's long since forgotten that it's there. Because he doesn't, he sure as hell doesn't raise it as an issue at
We
any point.
certainly know that 60 days can really change a lot of stuff here, so maybe 60 hours is a big deal.
Exactly. All right. So at this point, Boomer shoots Gideon, and then Boomer immediately just gets shot and killed, which is probably all Boomer wanted in the first place. And so then now suddenly they need the doctor because Gideon's hurt and he needs medical help, and there's no doctors in the apocalypse because it's been 60 days and I guess they're all dead. So nobody there is a doctor. They're all just illiterate townsies, I guess. So then we jump to back in Gideon's office, which again, it looks like every I haven't talked about this yet, but his office looks totally like every construction worksite office you've ever seen in the 70s.
Yes, they look
on a
like,
TV show with wood paneling and stuff, and the flimsiest door you've ever seen in your life.
they all look like demountable, like construction site offices. You're totally right.
Yeah.
They're probably people. They're probably like
is.
production offices for the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So they're back there, and she's going to try and help him out, but then she, instead of getting him the morphine, tries to give him a shot of, was it lithium or not lithium? It was.
Yeah, I didn't catch what it was.
It was some kind of
something
liquid
on
metal
there,
or some kind,
which is like diabolical.
Yeah, which would have killed him instantly, but of course he's too smart for that because he's a private school douche.
Snot-nosed teenager.
Yeah, and has her inject it on herself, and she's like yelling, "No, no!" and they inject her, and she dies. So and then he's like, "Let's see what she actually was going to give me." Wow. So now she's dead, and so in the meantime, I guess the other ones are sorry, I forgot. In all the chaos, Hal runs away.
Yes.
he just gets the hell out of Dodge. And Vinny and JJ are thrown back into the sort of pit or whatever that they're keeping all the prisoners in. And along with some other woman who's been in there forever. We don't really know her story, but we're supposed to feel sympathy for her, I guess.
Yeah,
Who knows why.
she had this whole backstory, but it just didn't matter. You didn't really care.
Yeah, I don't remember it at all.
And
so it's just gone.
And then Hal kind of finds a boat, right?
No, Hal goes back to Vinny's place and he gets some stuff and then he eats some popcorn.
Yeah, that's what he walks in and there's a tub of popcorn. I forgot about that.
It's a bowl of popcorn. He eats some of that because he's starving. So
That's right.
popcorn's really gonna hold with you. Fun fact, in grade 8, I did a play in high school, and my funny line was, popcorn really doesn't stay with you. It's all I remember about it. The movie was cheaper, or the play was cheaper by the dozen. I played the youngest kid because when I was in grade 8, I looked like I was 6 years old. Anyway,
That can be
so-
our next season's tagline. Popcorn doesn't stay with you. So Hal goes back and he does the whole, we're saying like he goes back to Vinny's place, who's got all the guns and all the armory and stuff. But this is another point where I said to myself, what is at stake here? You know, like he's gotten away, and if this bomb goes off in another 20 hours or whatever it is, it's not going to matter. It's just some crappy little shanty town with a bunch of douches. Like, there's no reason to be threatened by this ticking clock, because you're kind of like, okay, hurry up, like run the clock out so this place blows up, because these are clearly where the horrible people on Earth hang out. Just eradicate them. There's just no saving grace here of wanting this bomb to not blow up. I don't know. There's just a thing that bothered me. It was another realization of like, there's nothing at stake here.
Right. But Hal goes back and he frees everybody. In the meantime, Gideon has taken his first in command and a couple of kids, along with JJ, to a sailboat.
But how does Hal free everybody? He uses the loader.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He breaks open the prison wall, and Vinny starts helping, and then Vinny shows up with an armful of guns, handing them out to the prisoners. He's like, hey, who wants a gun? Who wants a gun? And then there's one shot of a guy who's on the crapper, and he stands up and he pulls his pants up, and as he walks away, the toilet is just sprayed in diarrhea, and he runs over. He's like, I'll take one, and then they cut away.
I missed that, and I'm glad I did. Yeah. So anyway, the people all kind of take over, and they start fighting back. And Gideon and JJ and his first in command and two kid soldiers head off to the sailboat, and they take off, and it's the sun setting. And I guess Hal looks out and sees JJ out there and looks at Vinny and says, can you swim? And I'm like, they're on a sailboat.
Yeah.
And they've got like a massive head start.
I thought that too. I was like,
and
what?
You're going to swim to catch up with them? So
But they do.
But in the meantime, Gideon has his first in command collect the guns of the two kids, and then proceeds to shoot them and kick them overboard. And then kind of briefly threatens his first in command, like he's going to do the same thing to him, but then doesn't. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, you just gave that guy all the guns, and you're sitting on a sailboat with him. There's just the three of you there now. Like, really, you going to threaten him like that? Like, this guy's gonna murder you in your sleep.
None of it was clear to me, because it's like Gideon's on the sailboat, on the same sailboat, and he's trying to get away. But like, does he know the bomb is active and it's kicking down, or is he just trying to escape?
He's just trying to go to the safe zone
that they found. Right.
Yeah. The one that's in the middle of the ocean
I guess
between,
they got a boat, so
between Sweden and Finland. So, and we're going to get there from Nova Scotia in a sailboat across the Atlantic.
And it's a weird way that they get him off the boat too. It's just this slow way that he melts him off and just like pushes him in the water and is like, go, and he like slowly paddles away from. It's just so pathetic looking.
Yep. So anyway, we get to the end, and it turns out Vinny and Hal have managed to catch up by swimming. And the other two guys are down below, and JJ is like, for whatever reason, steering the boat herself, who I thought didn't know how to.
No, she didn't. She only knew where it was, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. So, but she's driving the boat now. They knock Gideon off, don't they? Doesn't she swing like the sail or something, and it hits him?
I can't even tell you how he actually ends up in the water, but when he does, it's the lamest, like, slow paddle where he just paddles off into the darkness.
Yeah, him and his buddy, they paddle off. They go back to the base, And that's where you find out the soldiers have won the fight and they've killed everybody. Like, everybody is dead. They're all lined up nice and neat, but every villager or townie, whatever you want to call them, they're all dead back at the fort. And that's when they walk in and going like, and they look up at the missile rack and they say, hey, shouldn't those all be empty? Right as it hits zero.
And then enter the most not amazing or unincredible title card to wrap up a movie.
Yes. But before you get to that, I want to point out that there's no way in hell that sailboat is far enough away.
No, especially if they could have swam to it twice, out and back.
Swam to it and then back. Yeah, exactly. There's no way in hell they've gotten that far.
Definitely not.
Yeah. But then we go ahead and read the title card.
This movie, I just started laughing. You get a full screen title card with no music, and it just says, "The final victory has been won. Mankind can now rest in peace." These chodes have been hanging out with wooden pallets and tarps for 60 days are a threat to the world.
Well, they do mention at some point that they expected the winds to blow the fallout towards them over the winter or something like that. That's a throwaway line in there. So I guess they figured they were all going to die if they stayed there anyway.
But then the final victory would have been won anyways. Title card reads like as if it's a triumph.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. It's like mankind can now rest in peace, except we know there's at least 2 people still alive. So they don't even try to do like an Adam and Eve parable or anything like that either. It's just you've got JJ and Hal. Never mind the fact that if they are a couple, that's really messed up because JJ is probably JJ is probably like maybe 18.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, exactly.
Probably 17.
Right.
And Hal is at least in his late 30s.
Yes. Hard ending. Not as hard as Empire of Ash 3.
That's
but it
true.
has the same vibe of just cut the cord,
Yep.
movie's over, and you're like, whoa. For the time invested, I wanted more of a payoff on that.
Well, it's weird. I guess they just want to have a downer ending because it's nuclear war is bad.
I guess so. I should talk about the best part of the movie was the score.
Okay.
Actually,
I didn't think it was that great.
It was when it was good, it really popped up, and
that's true. Sometimes it was a little overboard. I thought a lot of the time,
but it just felt better than the movie itself. The quality and the tone and the score actually drove it a little bit better than anything else in the movie as far as the narrative goes. It was composed by Christopher Young.
Yeah, it did sound like it was very much a full orchestra too, which it probably was back then.
Yeah.
And yeah, this guy's done some good stuff.
He's done some great stuff. Did you check it out?
Yeah.
His third movie, this was his third like real movie. Then he did Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Invaders from Mars, Hellraiser, The Fly 2, The Vagrant, which I highly recommend. There's a movie that nobody saw with Bill Paxton. It was one of my favorite Bill Paxton movies. He went on to Hellraiser 2, 3, did Tales from the Hood, Virtuosity, Hard Rain, also a Vancouver movie, and then did the Nick Cage Ghost Rider from 2007. He was the composer in Drag Me to Hell, but he was also credited as Pedestrian with Cupcake.
They decided to put him in it. Nice.
Yeah, he did basically his career has been writing Hellraiser coattails, understandably, because he did the original. So he's been doing.
But he's also done Entrapment and The Wonder Boys is a great movie you'd hate. Yeah. The Gift, Swordfish was Bandits.
Yeah, he's
The Core, another Vancouver one.
An accomplished composer for sure, and his stuff pays off. And I just remember being one point in the movie being like, the music's pretty good. Yeah,
no, it was, like I said, it was a little overboard at times, but again, because it didn't really feel like it fit that movie because it was too much. But it was too big. Kudos to him.
Yeah, and then speaking of all-star cast in this film, you see Todd Ramsey cut this?
Yes, but I don't know who that is.
Well, he started out as associate editor on The Car, which is also Guillermo del Toro's favorite movie. Then he goes to Star Trek 79, pretty big movie, right? And then where
motion picture.
his important stuff comes is Escape from New York.
He starts teaming up with John Carpenter.
The Thing.
So,
And then he did two small movies in 84. And then 85, he goes on to DEFCON-4. But right after DEFCON-4, he does Black Moon Rising. Tommy Lee Jones concept, because that was written by John Carpenter. People forget about that. And then he also did Exorcist 3, which I think's a good movie. People argue it. But John Carpenter thinks it's his favorite Exorcist movie. And Jeffrey Dahmer loves Exorcist 3, too.
That's a selling point right there. That's a that's a quote you want.
I don't know. Yeah, there's some prestige in this movie because I guess at that period, 1985, if you're working in film, you probably end up becoming somebody to some extent.
Yeah.
Would you remake this?
Maybe I would. It would. If we did, it would have to be quite different.
Yes.
It couldn't be remade the same way. I mean, I think it's got a story that could be told, but the very, very basic premises be all that you keep, right?
Yes.
The three up on a space station, coming back down to Earth after an apocalypse.
And I think that is what makes the movie, that first act, captivating, as short as it is. You're like, this is great. This is a great concept. It's a great idea, watching three isolated people seeing the destruction of Earth and everything they know. But yeah, you're right. You got to do something with that second and third act when they get back on Earth. So,
well, and that's it. And maybe you make it. It might work better as a miniseries because I think the more interesting movie is them up on the station, and so you'd want to tell that story, and then it's almost like the second movie is them coming back down to Earth.
Yeah, there's more to be done with it. It's just obviously whether it's budget considerations or anything else, they're not explored in the right direction. And speaking of budget, it was 1.4 million.
That's not chump change, especially for 85.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, so Starship Invasions was $1 million. And it's like, okay.
And 6 years, and like 8 years earlier, though, too.
Yeah. And then The Brood was 1.4. I think this was the same amount of money as The Brood. Brood didn't have as many props, but it certainly looked a lot better.
But The Brood was what,
78.
It was 78.
Yeah.
Okay, because then you also got to remember we had crazy inflation, like way worse than we've been dealing with in the last year or so.
Right.
In the late 70s and early 80s. So that 1 point whatever million is worth way less
didn't go as
compared
far.
to those other movies.
And then especially
just
just production costs and everything else driving up on top of that. So
now, but they also made it in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And so there would be, I mean, it may not be as extensive as it is now, but there'd be all sorts of tax credits and everything else in place. So
it was I'm glad I watched it again. I definitely didn't pay as much attention to it when John told me to go and buy a copy of it on DVD in 2007, which I did right away. And I bought it from the HMV down on Granville Street.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's long gone.
I'm sure.
It was on Robson,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there was one other note about a little tidbit about this, because you talked about the poster, which again, I agree, the poster is great. There's a graphic book from 1988 called Space Wars, Worlds, and Weapons. And
do you have that book?
Well,
did you get that book?
It's on my list to buy things. So this is my next venture in hunting for, and I'm going to put it right next to my Condor Man book. But they used the painting of the poster as one of the images in the book. But it
What's the
didn't
book called again?
It's called Space Wars, Worlds, and Weapons from 1988.
Looking at now, I want this book.
Yeah, it looks cool. It's comforting.
The forward by Chris Foss. Chris Foss is awesome.
Okay. So I can't find the review score for DEFCON 4 on IMDb. That was the only other thing I wanted to talk about. I can't see it.
4.5 out of 10.
So with 4.5 out of 10, I don't think, on the gamut of other movies we've seen, I don't think this deserves a 4.5.
No, I think this is probably more like a 6.
Oh, I was going
5?
the other
Or you're going to go lower?
The other way. I'm looking.
No, I would think maybe like a 5.
I don't know, man. I'm looking at Starship
5.5.
Invasions 3.4, and I'm thinking this movie is.
Well, we agree that's not deserved.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't use that as the baseline then. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'd rate it higher for the concept, but the execution, the
Yeah.
first act, I would say a 4. I would say a 5 or something because it gets you hooked.
Yeah, yeah. I have a certain nostalgia for this. I mean, I did not remember a lot of this, so bits and pieces came back to me though, which I caught was, I'm a sucker for nostalgia.
Of course,
for my youth.
the best drug on earth.
So. Yep. Well, I guess that wraps up another episode of The Outer Reels. Thanks for coming along for this one, Sam.
Yeah, man.
Sorry you didn't enjoy it as much as I thought you might, but
Well, it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I always enjoy watching it. I just feel like it fell short for what it was, and it could have been a much better movie, even for the same money and everything else. And I enjoyed rewatching it, and I'm glad we covered it because there's a lot to talk about with it.
oh, it's perfect for it. It's so many people don't know this thing exists.
Yeah, and again, when you see that poster, like if I had seen this movie when I was growing up at my video store as a kid, I would have got it immediately.
This is one of those ones I used to stare at the video store.
Love that.
Extro was another one.
Extra.
I'm trying to think. There's one called Future Kill.
Oh yeah, H.R. Giger painted that.
Yeah, it's just brilliant.
I love the poster for Future Kill. I have one in a tube here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Huge fan.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like those are the posters you used to stare at. And, and the Terminator is another one that comes to mind, but everyone's seen that.
Of course.
So,
nice.
yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Look, it's always a pleasure. And
thank you.
Join us again for my next pick next week, which...
Looking forward to it.
And you're not. All right, we'll see you, man.
See ya.
Therefore, whatever appears on the television screen emerges as raw experience for those who watch it. Therefore, television is reality, and reality is less than television.